The cold void outside the Zalari patrol ship Valkus was indifferent to the heated debate raging inside the command deck. Sensors had just pinged an unidentified object drifting in the shadowed debris field near the war zone's edge. A battered escape pod barely clinging to life. Ensign Valek's eyes never left the screen. The pod was moving erratically, almost tumbling, and vital signs showed a single occupant. Human. The first human the Zalari had seen in decades. Protocol was clear. No contact with humanity. Their war had shattered the Terran alliance, scattering the survivors into ghost fleets or extinction. The Zalari Union had maintained a strict embargo ever since. "Captain," Velek said, voice steady but tinged with awe. "There's a human aboard. Barely alive." Captain Sailor sat stiffly in his chair, face shadowed under the dim lighting. His fingers drummed the armrest. "Human. Dangerous. Contaminated. We have orders." "We also have a duty," Valek said softly, "to preserve life. We can't just leave him out there to die." A chorus of murmurs rippled through the bridge. "Crew." Lieutenant Kassim leaned forward. "You're proposing what? We breach protocol? Invite sanctions or worse?" Sailor closed his eyes, weighing the risks. The political fallout, the strict laws. Yet something in Velek's steady gaze, something primal, stirred a memory from long ago, an echo of their species' founding ethos, compassion even when the stars are cold. "Prepare the medical bay," Sailor ordered. "Bring him aboard, but be cautious. Everyone else stand by for emergency lockdown." Minutes later, the escape pod was secured to the docking ring. Valek and 2 medics moved in, their suits humming softly. The pod's hull was scarred, burns and dents telling stories of desperate escape. Through the viewport they could see the occupant, a man curled and pale, barely breathing. Inside the Valkus, the medical bay was a stark contrast to the cold outside. Lights glowed softly over sterile instruments. The human was carefully transferred onto the biobed. His breathing was shallow, his skin marked with frostbite and bruises. No identification, no messages. Valek knelt beside him, brushing a hand lightly over the man's damp hair. "You're safe now," she whispered. He stirred slightly, eyes fluttered open, revealing storm-gray irises that held the weight of 1,000 lost worlds. His voice came as a rasp. Where am I, Zalari ship?" "You're safe." Velek's smile was gentle but guarded. He struggled to sit up, but a medic gently pressed him back. "You need rest. We'll keep you alive." For hours he drifted between consciousness and fever dreams, murmuring fragments of names and places. Earth, Terran Alliance, the Shadow Fleet. Something dark was chasing him, something that had torn his world apart. When dawn cycles passed, Elias Rourke finally spoke with enough strength to form sentences. "My fleet, destroyed. They came from beyond the rim. I was their last hope." His voice cracked, haunted. "I carried the map to the shipyards. If they find it..." Valek glanced toward the sealed case beside his stretcher. The black box wrapped tight in encrypted layers. Neither she nor the medical crew had dared open it. The captain's orders were clear. Hold it secure. Sealer entered quietly, listening to Rourke's trembling words. "You speak of starship yards?" "Lost technology." Elias nodded faintly. "The Terran fleet was broken but not dead. If this map reaches the right hands, we can build again. We can fight back." Kassim scoffed. "Fight back against whom? The galaxy wrote your obituary decades ago." Elias's eyes burned with sudden fire. "Not all battles are fought with guns and shields. Some are won with trust." Valek caught the captain's gaze. Something was shifting, a crack in the armor of old hatred and suspicion. Later that night, Valek stood alone on the observation deck, staring out into the endless black. The stars seemed colder than ever, but somewhere in the distance, maybe in the glow of a dying sun, there was a faint flicker of hope. The device in the medbay hummed faintly, as if alive. And somewhere deep inside the Valkus, a promise was quietly born. They had helped one human, The universe would never be the same. The hum of the Valkys life support systems filled the medbay as Ensign Valek sat beside the human's biobed, watching the fragile rise and fall of his chest. Elias Rourke's body was healing faster than expected, but his mind remained a locked fortress. He spoke little, and when he did, his words were cryptic, fragmented, shards of a shattered past. Days passed. The crew grew restless. The medbay became a silent war zone of glances, whispered debates, and shifting loyalties. Some whispered that the human was a spy, a weapon, or worse, a harbinger of the old war's horrors. Yet Ensign Valek refused to believe the darkness some painted him to be. One evening, Valek found herself alone with Elias. His eyes flickered open, meeting hers with a strange intensity. "You want to know who we are," he rasped. "Who I am." She nodded. "Tell me." He coughed, then whispered. "We were once many, a fleet so vast it covered entire systems, the Terran Alliance, Earth's last line against oblivion." Valek frowned. "Your fleet was destroyed, wasn't it?" He closed his eyes, memories biting. "Yes. The Cathar Dominion came from beyond the rim, merciless. They hunted us like animals, dismantling every outpost, every ship. I escaped with the last piece of hope, a map to our hidden shipyards. If that map falls into the wrong hands..." His voice broke. Valek's fingers itched toward the sealed black box resting beside him. The encrypted device never opened. She had tried once, secretly, but the code was unbreakable. She wondered if it was Elias's final safeguard. "I have to know what's inside," she said softly. Elias's gaze sharpened. "Not yet. The secrets are dangerous." Days later, a sudden alarm shattered the fragile calm. The Valkys' sensors detected multiple unidentified ships closing in at high speed. The crew scrambled to battle stations as the bridge erupted with frantic orders. "It's the Cathar," Lieutenant Kasim growled. "They've found us." Captain Sailor's face was grim. "Prepare for combat and lockdown. The human is our cargo now." The assault was brutal and swift. The enemy ships unleashed waves of plasma fire slicing through the void. The Valkys shuddered under the bombardment, but held its ground with precision. Amid the chaos, Elias stirred. "They're after the map," he said urgently. "You must protect it." Valek nodded, sealing the black box in a reinforced container. The battle waged on, each blast a thunderclap against the ship's hull. Just as the Valkys' weapons began to turn the tide, a strange signal pulsed from the black box. A burst of encrypted data transmitted directly to Valek's console. She blinked, confused, but the device refused to decrypt itself fully. Only a single phrase appeared: "Trust no one but yourself." Later, in the aftermath of the battle, the injured were tended to and systems repaired. Elias remained weak but lucid. Valek approached him quietly. "Why trust me?" Elias's eyes held something ancient: hope, fear, and determination. "Because you chose mercy when all others chose death. Because sometimes, the smallest light in the dark guides entire fleets home." A cold unease settled in Valek's gut. If Elias was right and the map was real, it meant humanity was not just surviving, but rebuilding. That they might one day return. And when they did, what would they find? Friend or foe? That night, Valek found herself drawn back to the black box. Unable to resist its pull, she touched the smooth surface and a flicker of blue light shimmered beneath the encrypted layers. A star system unknown to the Zalari, marked with precise coordinates. A whisper escaped her lips. "What are you hiding?" Somewhere deep within, the ship's network, an untraceable message blinked on a hidden console. "Remember me, stay safe, stay ready." Valek's heart quickened. This was no accident. The universe was waking. The Valkys had saved one human. But that single act was about to change everything. The echo of the battle still reverberated through the Valkys' corridors as the crew worked tirelessly to repair the damage. Yet, Beneath the hum of machinery and the measured footsteps of engineers, an undercurrent of unease gnawed at everyone. Aboard. Lieutenant Valek stood near the observation deck, watching the stars blur as the ship altered course away from the conflict zone. Elias Rourke was confined to the medbay, but his restless mind seemed to haunt every corner of the ship. In the quiet, Valek reviewed the encrypted device again, determined to crack its code. Hours bled into each other, and the ship's AI refused all her attempts. The device pulsed faintly with an otherworldly glow, almost as if it were alive, or waiting. Suddenly, a sharp alarm shattered the calm. The Valkis's sensors detected a signal beacon activating deep within their own ship. Originating near the cargo hold. Report, Captain Sailor barked, racing to the bridge. Valek and a security team rushed to investigate. They found a small shuttle docked clandestinely in the cargo bay, one that had not been listed in their manifest. The hatch was ajar. Inside the shuttle lay a holographic message, flickering erratically. Valek activated it, and the ghostly figure of a man appeared. Older, battle-worn, his eyes fierce with unspoken regrets. Elias Rourke, the message began. If you're seeing this, then the map is in danger. The Cathar Dominion hunts, the last embers of humanity's fleet. They will come for the shipyards and for those who helped me. Trust no one. The message paused, glitching as static crawled across the image. Then with a crackle, it resumed. This is a warning. And a plea. The black box contains the coordinates to Earth's secret shipyards, but also encrypted data on an ancient weapon, something powerful enough to turn the tide. If it falls to the wrong hands, our fight ends. The image faded, leaving Valek staring at the empty space where the hologram once danced. Why was this shuttle here? How did it get aboard? Captain Sailor demanded. No record of boarding, the security chief replied, shaking his head. Valek's mind raced. Was this a trap, or a hidden lifeline left by Elias himself? That night, Valek found Elias awake for the first time since the battle, his gray eyes gleaming with urgency. You found the message, he said, voice low. I left that for you. Not just a warning, but a test. A test? Valek echoed. To see if the Zalari would protect humanity's last hope. The shipyards are out there, forgotten, abandoned, but they hold more than ships. They hold power. Valek clenched her fists. You trust me with this? Elias nodded slowly. Because you chose mercy, not fear. Because sometimes, the smallest spark can ignite a galaxy. Suddenly, the ship's communications officer interrupted with a sharp alert. Captain, unidentified ships approaching at high speed, signature unknown. Battle stations, Sealer ordered immediately. The Valkis surged forward, weapons locked and shields raised. The approaching vessels bore no markings but moved with lethal precision. They opened fire before any warning. The ensuing battle was fierce and chaotic. The Valkis dodged plasma blasts, returning fire with calculated volleys. Amid the cacophony, Valek realized the attackers weren't just after the ship, they were after Elias. In the thick of the fight, the black box in the medbay suddenly activated, projecting a three-dimensional star chart. The projection pinpointed a system deep in uncharted space, glowing ominously. Valek's heart pounded. The shipyards, she whispered. Realizing the attackers' true intent, Sailor made a split-second decision. We can't outrun them. We have to lure them away from the cargo hold. Valek volunteered to lead a small strike team on a diversion. With a nod from the captain, she suited up and prepared to board one of the enemy ships if necessary. The diversion worked. The attackers pursued Valek's team through a deadly game of cat and mouse, allowing the Valkis to secure the cargo bay and safeguard Elias. Later, back aboard the Valkis, Valek confronted Elias. You're not just a survivor, she said. You're a commander. You've been running from this war for years. Elias met her gaze, weariness etched deep in his features. Running isn't the word, I'm preparing. Humanity will return, and when it does, it won't be as victims. Valek looked toward the glowing projection of the star system. Then we'll stand with you. A quiet resolve settled between them, a fragile alliance forged in shadows and fire. In the vast darkness of space, One truth was certain: the past was not done with them yet, and the future depended on what they did next. The Valkys drifted, silently through the cold void, its hull scarred but intact after the recent assault. The crew moved with cautious purpose, repairing systems and patching wounds both physical and psychological. Yet beneath the hum of activity, an invisible tension hung heavy, the kind that grips a ship harboring secrets too dangerous to speak aloud. Captain Sealer sat alone in the strategy room, staring at the star charts spread before him. A single blinking marker illuminated a system deep in uncharted space, the coordinates projected from Elias's black box. It was a place no Zalari dared visit, a relic of an age before their union rose to power. Lieutenant Velik, Silar, called quietly as she entered the room. This star system, it holds more than just shipyards, doesn't it? Velik's eyes flicked to the charts. Yes, Captain. According to Elias, it's Earth's last secret, hidden construction yards, but also an ancient weapon, or something like it, something powerful enough to change the balance of the galaxy. Sailor sighed. If what he says is true, then we hold the key to humanity's resurgence. But it's a dangerous key, one that could ignite old conflicts or create new ones. Velik nodded. The human survival, the encrypted device, even the attack on our ship, all signs that others know this too. The Cathar Dominion will not rest until it's destroyed. Their conversation was interrupted by a message from the bridge. A Terran scout ship had made contact. The crew stiffened at the unexpected signal, eyes fixed on the flickering transmission. Unidentified. Vessel requesting immediate parley with the Valkys, the communications officer reported. Captain Seller exchanged a glance with Velik. Open a channel, he ordered. Static cleared, and a stern, authoritative voice filled the room. This is Admiral Elias Rourke of the Terran 7th Fleet. We come in peace and with a proposal. Elias himself appeared on the screen, older now, his features hardened by years of command and battle. The crew gasped quietly. The man they had saved was not just a survivor, but a leader. I stand before you to repay a debt, Elias continued. You saved my life when the galaxy had already condemned us. Now humanity returns not as fugitives, but as allies. The room buzzed with whispers. This was unprecedented. Humanity, once scattered and broken, returning with a fleet of warships. The Zalari Union had dismissed the Terrans as extinct relics. Selar swallowed his skepticism. What do you want, Admiral? To forge a pact, Elias said firmly. An alliance against the threats that seek to consume us all. The Cathar, Dominion is rising again. Alone, neither of our species can survive what's coming. Together we stand a chance. The proposition was met with silence. Trust was not given lightly between starfaring races, especially ones that had never truly met before. Velik stepped forward. Admiral, why come now? Why reveal yourselves after all this time? Elias's gaze hardened. Because the enemy we fled is not the only threat. The weapon hidden in the shipyards, ancient and deadly, draws forces older than any of us. I was the last to escape its awakening. Now I have returned to warn you. Seller weighed the words carefully. We must consult the High Council. This decision affects the entire Union. Understood, Elias replied. I am prepared to wait, but know this. Every moment we hesitate, the Cathar draw closer. The transmission ended, leaving the Valkys crew in thoughtful silence. Later, in the council chambers, elders debated heatedly. Some saw humanity's return as a threat, a reminder of past wars and fragile peace. Others, like Velik, argued that the offer could not be ignored. If we reject this alliance, Velik insisted, we risk facing the Dominion alone, and we know what that means. An elder's voice echoed, but what of their secrets? What of the weapon Elias speaks of? Are we prepared to share such power? Sealer finally stood, voice calm but resolute. We have already taken a risk by saving Elias. Now we must take another, by choosing cooperation over fear. The Council's decision was slow but unanimous. the Zalari would accept the Terran offer of alliance. A quiet pact was formed, one forged not in grand ceremonies but in the shadows of uncertainty and hope. Back aboard the Valkis, Velik reflected on how far they had come. From a dying human rescued in secret to a fleet commander standing before the galaxy, Elias Rourke embodied resilience and trust. She held the black box, still humming faintly with encrypted secrets. Whatever lay within, it was now the cornerstone of a fragile new future. As the Valkis changed course to rendezvous with the Terran fleet, Velik's eyes scanned the endless stars outside. Somewhere beyond the darkness, new alliances were born, and new battles awaited. But for the first time in decades, humanity and the Zalari stood ready to face the storm, together. The void was vast, unyielding, and dark, yet through it a new light blazed, a fleet unlike any the Zalari had ever witnessed. On the Valkis's bridge, the crew gathered in stunned silence as the sensor arrays picked up the distant formation. Hundreds of vessels, sleek and purposeful, moved in perfect unison. Their hulls gleamed with polished steel and strange markings, both alien and eerily familiar. Lieutenant Velik's breath caught. "They're here." Captain Sealer leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Human ships, and so many of them. Larger than we expected." The display zoomed in, revealing the flagship's name etched boldly on its prow. Rourke's Vow. The Zalari whispered among themselves, the name carrying weight. It was a name spoken in legends and nightmares, the last human commander's pledge now realized in iron and fire. Across the void, Admiral Elias Rourke stood on the bridge of his flagship, his gray eyes steady. The years had carved deep lines into his face, but the fire of command burned as fiercely as ever. "Open a channel," Elias ordered. The Valkis communications officer complied. Moments later, the Admiral's voice filled the Valkis command room. "To the Zalari Union we bring greetings. We come not as refugees, but as partners. We have returned to honor a debt and to fulfill a promise." The transmission was met with mixed reactions. Some Zalari officers bristled with suspicion, memories of past wars stirring. Others felt a surge of hope. The long-vanished humans were no longer ghosts. Captain Sealer answered, "Admiral Rourke, your arrival is unexpected. What is the purpose of this fleet?" Elias's voice was calm but unwavering. "We come seeking alliance and assistance. The Cathar Dominion's threat grows. They have shattered worlds and fleets alike. Alone, neither species can stand against them." Velik stepped forward, her eyes locked on the transmission. "Your fleet, it's unlike anything we imagined. How did you rebuild?" Elias's expression softened briefly. "Years of survival, scavenging ancient shipyards, and uniting scattered Terran survivors. Our shipyards, hidden and secret, were the keys. We rebuilt in the shadows, preparing for this moment." Behind him, the fleet's hangar bays roared to life. Squadrons of fighters launched in tight formations, their engines cutting through the darkness like silver knives. "Let us demonstrate our strength," Elias declared. The Valkis crew watched in awe as the human fighters executed flawless maneuvers, their coordination reminiscent of a living organism. The power and precision were undeniable. Yet beneath the display lay an unspoken question. How would the Zalari Council react to this formidable new force arriving without warning? Back on the Valkis, Captain Sailor addressed his officers. "This fleet changes the balance of power in the galaxy. Our next steps must be cautious but decisive." Velik's mind raced. The human fleet's arrival was a turning point, one that could unite old enemies or spark new wars. As the human flagship aligned alongside the Valkis, a small delegation of Terran officers boarded the Zalari ship. The atmosphere was tense, but respectful. Old prejudices clashed with new hopes. Elias greeted Sailor with a firm handshake. "Thank you for saving me. That act of mercy is the foundation of everything we've built." Sailor nodded. "We acted because it was right. Now, we must act because it's necessary." Over hours of negotiations, plans unfolded. Joint patrols, intelligence sharing, combined fleet exercises, a fragile but growing partnership. Yet Elias kept a wary eye on the horizon. The Cathar will not wait. Their fleets are massing, preparing to strike, Velik asked quietly. What about the ancient weapon in the shipyards? Does it still exist? Elias hesitated, then said, It's real, more dangerous than any of us imagined. But it's also a last hope. If used wisely, it could end this war. That night, as the stars shimmered beyond the viewport, Velik stood beside Elias on the Valkis's observation deck. Admiral, do you think the galaxy is ready for humanity's return? Elias smiled faintly. Ready or not, we're here. And we're not alone anymore. The two stared out into the infinite blackness, where the fate of stars and entire civilizations hung in the balance. The calm before the storm stretched across the void, but no one aboard the Valkis mistook it for peace. The arrival of humanity's fleet was a beacon of hope, yes, but also a flare that drew the eyes of ancient enemies. The Cathar Dominion had grown bold. Their scouts prowled the outer systems, their warships dark silhouettes against distant stars waiting for the perfect moment to strike. On the bridge of the Valkis, Captain Sailor's fingers danced over controls as the fleet formed ranks behind them. Next to him, Admiral Elias Rourke stood silent, a grim shadow on the brightly lit command deck. We've received intelligence, Velik reported, voice tense. The Dominion fleet is amassing near the Epsilon Eridani system. Less than 2 jumps from here. Sailor narrowed his eyes. They're planning a decisive blow. If they control Epsilon Eridani, the Dominion can cut off our supply lines and isolate the system. Elias stepped forward. Then we strike first. Waiting invites annihilation. The Zilari and Terran ships moved as one, their combined fleet, swelling into a massive wall of steel and light. The Valkis led the charge, its engines flaring as they crossed into hostile space. The tension was palpable as they approached the system. Tactical screens flickered with data, enemy ships, formations, and defenses. The Dominion had prepared, but the humans and Zilari were ready. Prepare for battle, Sailor commanded. Let's remind them why the stars belong to no tyrant. Suddenly, the Dominion opened fire. Plasma blasts tore through the void, targeting the lead ships. The Valkis shuddered under the assault, its shields absorbing the worst. Velik's squadron launched, weaving through enemy fire, their fighter pilots executing deadly maneuvers taught through decades of human experience. The Zilari gunners responded, with precise volleys, carving gaps in the Dominion's lines. Amid the chaos, Elias coordinated strikes from the flagship. His voice, calm and commanding, cut through the noise. Target their command ship. Without their leader, the fleet will falter. The battle raged, a brutal dance of destruction and survival. The Dominion's command ship loomed ahead, protected by layers of escort vessels. Velik's fighter squadron darted forward, slipping past enemy lines. Explosions lit the darkness as they hit critical systems. But the Dominion had one last gambit. A massive weapon, ancient and deadly, emerged from a hidden orbital platform, a relic from a war long forgotten. Its beam charged, aimed directly at the heart of the fleet. Shields at maximum, Sealer ordered. The beam struck, cutting through the fleet's front like a scythe. Ships exploded, debris scattering into the void. Elias's voice was urgent. We must disable that weapon. Now. Velik led a daring assault team aboard the platform, navigating its labyrinthine corridors. The corridors echoed with the metallic clang of boots and distant alarms. Inside the control room, the team faced automated defenses and security drones, remnants of a forgotten era's fury. Velik's quick thinking and steady hand disabled the weapon's core. Outside, the fleet capitalized on the disruption, overwhelming the Dominion forces. Back on the Valkis, the flagship absorbed a direct hit, alarms blaring. Elias steadied himself, then looked to Sailor. This fight is far from over, Elias said. But today we proved something important. Humanity and Zilari can fight as one. The Dominion fleet retreated, their grip on the system broken but their threat lingering like a shadow. As silence fell over the battered battlefield, the Allied fleet regrouped. The cost had been high, but the victory was vital. In the aftermath, Felix stood beside Elias on the observation deck, both gazing into the star-strewn abyss. "What now?" she asked. Elias's eyes held steel. "Now, we prepare for the next wave. The Dominion will return, and the weapon we disabled was only a fragment of their power." Velek nodded, her resolve hardening. "Then we'll be ready." Above them, the stars seemed to pulse with quiet promise, and the tides of war continued to turn. The Valkis drifted in orbit around the desolate moon of Vera 9, a forgotten world in the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Beneath its barren surface lay the remnants of a civilization lost to time, a civilization that might hold the key to turning the tide against the Cathar Dominion. Captain Sailor stood on the observation deck, watching the pale light cast long shadows across the moon's cracked surface. Beside him, Elias Rourke studied the ancient star charts projected from the black box, his expression tight with focus. "According to this," Elias said, "the weapon system we disabled in Epsilon Eridani is only part of a larger network, one buried deep beneath worlds like this. The ancients called it the Aegis Array." Velek, leaning against the railing, raised an eyebrow. "Aegis Array? Sounds like a myth." "Not a myth," Elias replied, "but a warning. The black box contains fragments of its activation codes scattered across several planets. If the Cathar access even one part, the consequences could be catastrophic." The crew prepared a landing party to explore the moon's ruins. Velek volunteered to lead, her curiosity matched only by her sense of duty. As the shuttle descended through the thin atmosphere, the landscape revealed itself. Vast, cracked plains interspersed with towering spires of crystalline rock. The ruins of a great city lay half-buried beneath layers of dust and time. The team disembarked cautiously, their boots crunching on ancient stone. Velek's scanner picked up faint energy readings deep beneath the surface. "Looks like the entrance to an underground complex," she said, motioning to a cavernous archway carved into the mountainside. Inside, the air was thick with dust and silence. The walls glowed faintly with strange symbols, ancient script that even Elias struggled to interpret. "This language predates any known galactic civilization," he muttered, tracing a finger over the carvings. "It's a language of power and warning." Deeper into the labyrinth, the team discovered a chamber filled with dormant machinery, massive consoles, pulsing with dim light, and towering obelisks inscribed with holographic maps. Velek approached a console and tentatively placed her hand on the surface. A surge of energy crackled through the room, and a holographic star map flickered to life, highlighting a cluster of systems connected by glowing lines. "It's the Aegis network," Elias breathed, "a planetary defense system designed to shield entire sectors." Suddenly, the chamber trembled. Mechanical whirring echoed as long dormant defenses activated, sealing exits and unleashing robotic sentinels. "Ambush!" Velek shouted. The team scattered, blasters firing as the sentinels advanced with relentless precision. Amid the chaos, Velek darted toward the central console, fingers flying over controls to override the system. Sparks flew as she worked, sweat beading on her brow. "Almost there," she murmured, heart pounding. With a final keystroke, the defenses powered down. The chamber fell silent once more. "We can't let this technology fall into the Dominion's hands," Elias said grimly. "If they control the Aegis Array, they'll be unstoppable." As the team gathered data and secured the site, Velek felt the weight of the mission settle heavily on her shoulders. The secrets they had unearthed were both a gift and a curse, a weapon that could save billions or destroy them all. Back aboard the Valkis, the atmosphere was tense. The combined Zalari-Terran fleet awaited word on the discoveries, and on the next move. Captain Seller convened a council of officers and scientists, the holographic map of the Aegis network glowing in the center. "We have the means to activate the Aegis and protect our systems," Salar said. "But only if we can unlock the rest of the network before the Dominion does." Elias's gaze was steady. "We're running out of time." Velek stepped forward. "Then we find the others. We hunt the remaining activation codes. The future depends on it." The room fell into a determined silence. They were no longer just Survivors or soldiers, they were guardians of a legacy older than any star. As the Valkys set course for the next system, the stars outside shimmered with unspoken promise and looming danger. In the endless void, the battle for the galaxy's future was far from over. The combined fleet loomed like a living colossus in orbit around the war-torn world of Thalanis Prime. The final activation node of the Aegis array lay buried beneath its fractured surface, a beacon of hope and danger intertwined. For months, the Zilari and Terran alliance had hunted the scattered fragments of this ancient defense system, racing against the shadow of the Cathar Dominion's relentless advance. Captain Sailor stood on the command deck of the Valkys, eyes fixed on the swirling storms raging across Thalanis' atmosphere. Beside him, Admiral Elias Rourke's voice was steady, but the weight of command pressed heavily on his shoulders. "This is it," Elias said. "If we succeed, the Aegis array will shield our worlds and cripple the Dominion's reach. If we fail—" "We don't fail," Sealer interrupted. "Not this time. The Warfleet was a marvel. Hundreds of ships, Zilari and Terran, united under a single banner. Fighters launched in tight formations, striking at Cathar patrols, harassing the perimeter. Battleships bristled with energy weapons, ready to unleash devastation. Inside the sprawling battle station orbiting Thalanis Prime, a special operations team prepared for descent. Valak led them, the codebreaker, scout, and warrior who had become the symbol of hope for two civilizations. "Remember," she briefed her team, "the Dominion will defend this site to the last. We're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every life this fleet protects." The shuttle plunged through the planet's turbulent atmosphere, shaking violently. The ground rushed up to meet them, a scarred battlefield littered with ruins and wreckage. The team moved swiftly, navigating the labyrinth of tunnels that hid the activation node. Enemy patrols were relentless, Cathar warriors desperate to hold their prize. Explosions rocked the tunnels as the battle grew fiercer. Finally, they reached the core chamber. The ancient control console hummed with latent power, its interface alien but eerily familiar thanks to the fragments Elias had decrypted. Valak placed her hands on the controls, fingers dancing over the strange symbols. The air thrummed with energy as the Aegis array slowly began to awaken. But the Dominion was not done. From the shadows, a towering Cathar warlord emerged, its eyes blazing with hatred. "You will not live to see this system protected," it snarled. Blaster fire erupted. Valak's team fought desperately, each second dragging as the Aegis powered up. With a final surge, Valak activated the array. Outside, the sky blazed as the Aegis shield ignited, an immense dome of shimmering light that enveloped Thalanis Prime and its orbiting fleet. Cathar ships fired blindly, their weapons absorbed or deflected by the shimmering barrier. The Dominion's assault faltered, their forces thrown into disarray. "Shield stable," Elias announced from the bridge, a rare smile breaking his usually stern face. "The tide has turned," Captain Sailor's voice was resolute. "Now we press forward. With the Aegis active, we take the fight to them." The fleet surged, a wave of fire and fury smashing into the fractured Dominion forces. Fighters engaged in brutal dogfights. Capital ships unleashed volleys that lit the stars aflame. Amid the chaos, the unity of two species shone brightest, Zilari precision and human ingenuity intertwining in perfect harmony. After hours of fierce battle, the Dominion's command ship exploded in a violent supernova of energy. Their retreat was disorderly, their grip on the sector broken. The fleet regrouped, battered, but victorious. Across the command decks, cheers rang out. Hope rekindled in the hearts of those who had fought and survived. Elias stood beside Seller, gazing at the distant stars. "We saved more than a world today," Elias said quietly. "We saved the future." Seller nodded. "The galaxy is vast and dangers remain. But together, humanity and the Zilari have become a force no darkness can extinguish." Valak joined them, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the Aegis shield beyond the viewport. "This was never just about survival," she said. "It was about proving who we are, that even in the darkest times we can rise." As the combined fleet set course for home, The stars seemed to shine a little brighter, a testament to resilience, unity, and the unyielding spirit of humanity. They had helped one human long ago, and now an entire fleet had returned. The galaxy would never be the same.